When Trump came down the escalators in his building, I believe it was 2015 or 2016, and said what he said specifically about Mexicans, my heart dropped because I knew he had opened up a can of worms. And I mean a can of worms that not only affected Mexicans, but African Americans and all minorities. By that I mean, if he felt that way about Mexicans, I knew how he felt about African Americans. And since he has been on the scene, anti-blackness, hatred toward black people, especially and other minorities, has only grown. You see, America has a really horrible racial history. And that racial hatred, it never left. Laws were changed, but the hearts of people never changed. And that racial hatred is always just beneath the surface. And the last thing that we need in a country like this is to stir up that pot, to release that racism. Because once that genie is out the bottle, it is very, very hard to put it back in. I don't blame Trump for it because it was here before he got here, but he certainly put his finger in it and he stirred it up. So I'm here to tell you, whether you want to hear it or not, America deeply despises African Americans, period. You don't want to hear it, you don't want to look at it. And that's everybody, blacks, whites, Asians, Arabs, Hispanics. No one wants to really look it in the face. But it is inescapable and we cannot deny it because it's there. So in this video, I'm going to share from my heart what many of us don't want to acknowledge. And that is this country's hatred toward African American people is on full display and it's increasing. Stay with me. Before we get started, please go over to Amazon.com and grab a copy of my book, Education and Justice. If you have an African American son in public school, you need this book because I teach you the many ways that public schools mistreat African American boys and what you can do to help your son. So go over there and get your copy immediately. So, I don't want to make this video. I don't want to do this. I don't want to talk about this. It is not something that makes me happy. It's not uplifting. It doesn't give me warm feelings. It is, quite frankly, sad and depressing. It almost brought me to tears as I thought about it. But it's true. And Jesus said, the truth shall set you free. We got to face the truth in this country. Yes, we changed laws. Yes, we enacted laws. And yes, the country is better than where it was those 250 years when blacks were under the law, chattel property. And it's better than it was when blacks were Jim Crowed. It's not a whole lot better. And we are digressing. We're backsliding. We're going back. I'm not race baiting. This serves me in no way. But I will speak the truth. And the truth is, this is a very, very racist country. And the whites watching this video, you don't want to admit it. But yet, you know, in your heart, it's true. You know that this country is anti-black. You know for yourself, if you're being honest, that America despises African Americans. Now, the word despise means to hold something in contempt, to think very little of something, to place no value on that person or group of people. I didn't use the word hate, although the words hate and despise are very close. But I decided not to use the word just hate, but definitely despise, hold contempt for. We can feel it. We can feel it when we go into stores. We can feel it when we're in certain neighborhoods. We can feel it on our jobs. We can feel it around certain people. And some of these people who hold this contempt for us, sometimes they can be nice outwardly, but we know a lot of you profess to be Christians. But your contempt for another human being is proof that you absolutely are not following Christ. How can you harbor hatred and look down on somebody as if they're not human and be a Christ follower? That's not possible. We feel the hatred coming from you, the anti-blackness. You may not want to accept it. You may not want to acknowledge it, but it is there. We know it's there. We feel it. We see it every so often over the last decade. Some of you are so filled with hate, you have gone into our communities and murdered innocent people. One guy went into a church, sat there so full of hate. He sat there and listened to them have Bible study. And they welcomed him and loved him and embraced him, not knowing he was sitting there full of hatred, full of racial hatred that caused him to pull out a 9mm and murder 9 innocent people that he didn't know. They were unarmed. They were Christians. They were studying the Bible. And he murdered them. Another young man went to Buffalo, New York, to where he knew most of the blacks congregated, like one of the only grocery stores in the area, pulled out a gun and murdered for no reason 10 innocent people. Just hatred. Every day, we black folks are dealing with some level of this racial hatred. It goes from microaggressions to insults to the finger up to a sneer, a look, an insult. And we endure that every single day. There isn't a day in my life I don't endure that. Some form of that. Someone just treating me like I am nothing simply because I'm an African American. We got to take a serious look at this. We got to be honest about this. And yes, again, going back to Trump, when he came down those escalators and said the things he said, I dropped my head. I put my head in my hands, in fact. I knew what we were in for. I knew it because I know the history of this country. And unfortunately, some blacks support him. Some blacks overlook the anti-blackness that comes from him. You know it's true. I know it's true. The country knows it's true. The world knows it's true. America deeply despises African Americans, period. And we're not going to be able to deal with this until we deal with this. And let me give you 4 things that we must do in order to deal with the racism. Until we do these 4 things, we will never as a nation overcome this. Number 1, we got to recognize the racism and stop pretending like it doesn't exist. Some of you even go to the point of calling blacks racist when blacks have been the victim of racism. And I don't want to hear you say anything and don't care about you saying I'm playing the victim card. Who cares? That's some garbage that you thought of to try to shame blacks from telling the truth about racism. Who cares about that? Second, repudiate it. It must be repudiated. Condemn it. Third of all, repent from it. Turn away from it. Change your mind and heart. Recognize, repudiate, repent, and fourth of all, repair. Repair the damage that you've done to the African American community for over 400 years. Yes, I'm talking about reparations. That is a very basic biblical tenet. When God delivered Israel out of Egyptian bondage, he gave them reparations so that they could start building. We've never received reparations. And don't tell me that because you have tried to be more just and more fair by providing this or that, that's reparations. No, that's what you should have already been doing. Reparations is paying us what you owe us because we have done and have made a lot of money for the white community over the last 400 years, especially during slavery and Jim Crow. My grandparents and some of my aunts and uncles were sharecroppers. I'm very familiar with sharecropping. And my family was enslaved. Both sides, my maternal family, my paternal family, were enslaved. I've traced my family history. And if you ride through many African-American neighborhoods, the lower income neighborhoods, you see the damage that you've done to our people. You've given reparations to Native Americans. You've given reparations to Japanese Americans. You've given reparations even to enslavers. But you despise and you have such contempt for African-American people, you get hot under the collar just to mention the word reparations for Black Americans. What I can tell you is this as I close. God is a just God. And God is not pleased with the way that you have treated African American people solely because of the love of money that you justify with race. I believe it is part of the reason why we're in $33 trillion of debt and all sorts of horrible things happen across this country, pandemics and everything else. I believe those things occur because you won't do the four things that I said. You won't recognize your sin. You won't repudiate your sin. You will not repent of your sin, and you will not repair what your sin has done. And so now you're reaping the whirlwind. And instead of doing those four things, you're doubling down. But again, God is not pleased with the United States of America, especially with the direction that it's going right now. That's what I had to say to you. Thank you for listening.